All right, we're live. And for this live broadcast, I'm just going to hang out here, settle into the moment, and fingers crossed, say some insightful things that invite you to open up, fear less, and love more. Ta-da! Welcome back, Ree. Sometimes I have to look at my computer screen, which is behind the camera. So I'm doing these weird movements. So, this series of live streams that I've been doing, I think this is day 6 in a row. We had 7 of them scheduled. I'm not even sure why I organized this other than I was inspired to do so. But I'm glad I did it. It's been really, really beautiful. And, it inspires me. It inspires me to keep doing this thing that I do. But also, I'm constantly moved to do it in a more focused way. And I say this super playfully, but there's a part of my heart that breaks where we can't just sit down together and share real life space and journey through this for an extended period of time and really allow it to marinate, allow it to be seen in all aspects of our lives. And then to gently watch the common tension that we tend to journey around with slowly unravel and melt into the most beautiful gratitude for simply being alive. And it's fun to see a lot of the same faces and names come back to join me. And of course, I wonder what it would be like to meet you in person. Because it's like, okay, I've got a name, which may or may not be your real name, a photo, which in some instances it's a photo of a sunset, a photo of a dog. So not a lot of information about you. But yet, I feel that you're here with me. Welcome back, Caroline. So, let me know. It's very helpful to hear what's going on with you. What might you want to dive into today? What seems stuck? What seems confusing? What seems hurtful? What seems to be the inner resistance that doesn't want love to flow? Or are you just rested with a heart full of gratitude? Those adorable dogs. It's not the typical daily dog that's making a bunch of noise. They're a little bit further off in the distance. Oh, it's so funny. I was editing that broadcast from yesterday, and found myself so playfully irritated with editing out dog noises. And it's a bit of a surgical procedure, because often the dog is barking underneath my words. And so I have to go into the wave form, which might not make any sense to you, and surgically remove the dog noise while still making it sound normal, what I'm saying. And then within a 45-minute talk, there's 128 surgical procedures I need to perform. Then to get a final product that is really beautiful. And I just refuse to put it out there in the world with a bunch of dogs barking in the background. That seems like an unnecessary distraction. I had the same issue when I was living in Hawaii with roosters. With roosters doing their rooster thing. But I tended to leave a lot of those in there because it was seemingly a more appropriate ambiance. One of these days, I'm going to build a soundproof studio. Then I can be happy. Because that would dramatically speed up my post-production time. Yeah, it is funny. And isn't it interesting that there's the potential for it to be funny, and there's the potential for it to be soul crushing. Of course, that's everything. And for it to be soul crushing, it has to be a huge threat to my imaginary sense of self-importance. Don't these dogs understand how important I am? How rude of them to be what they are, to do what they do, when I'm here trying to prove how special I am. If only it wasn't for the dogs, I could be happy. All right, a recommended topic from Caroline as a plane passes overhead. So funny. I mentioned yesterday that in a couple months, I'm going to move my home office from this bedroom to a different bedroom. That might be a little bit easier to insulate from all the noise. But it's going to be a couple months because I have a retreat here at the house, and it's already kind of set up to do what it's going to do. But the recommended topic is on acceptance. Gratitude in the mind. Acceptance. We could make that the focus. Gosh, I appreciate you guys. Thanks for being here with me. Thank you for bringing your humanity, the reality of your human struggle, which is profoundly innocent and beautifully adorable. And not a threat at all to the truth of what you are. All right, so we're going to do a talk on acceptance. That's the intention. And we will start by accepting the possibility that there will be dogs barking and airplanes flying overhead. And cars driving by. And yeah, I like to take my time. Okay. Gosh, there's so many things I want to say that, being that I'm also streaming on Insight Timer, I'm not allowed to say. Which is weird, but I understand. I'm trying to follow the rules. Okay, let me take a moment and just breathe. And then I'll run my mouth about the topic of acceptance. Welcome, New Jersey. Welcome to this space. A space for deeply honest spiritual inquiry, where we're taking a moment to ask the question, what's really going on here in this experience of being human? And today the topic we're going to explore is acceptance. And of course, for me, when invited to talk about this topic, something inside asked the question, well, why? Why do you want to talk about that? What is it about the idea of acceptance that is so appealing? What is it in you that longs for acceptance? what is desired. And in one way, it seems a little obvious that what we really want is some aspect of peace. We recognize that the apparent opposite of peace, which is an inner chaos, a tension, and anxiety, is so often there because there is the opposite of acceptance. We're arguing with what is, we're fighting what is, we're resisting what is. And it seems like a beautiful invitation to just accept what is. And so my intention here is to, in some way, speak to the nature of reality, the nature of self and being human, and explore some insight and wisdom that makes acceptance profoundly easy. And if not, a little bit funny as well. There's so much to say here. Let me start with the big hang-up that I think will set a foundation that helps us look in the right direction rather than looking at something that'll never work. The big hang-up is that we assume that acceptance is something that you do. Therefore, we try to accept. And this isn't really the, let's call it, this isn't the sincerity of the invitation of acceptance to have you do the thing called acceptance. Rather, acceptance is the byproduct. Acceptance is what happens. And in the happening of acceptance, there is a greater peace that emerges. Do you see how that might be the hang-up? Maybe you had that assumption that we were going to talk about how do I do the thing called acceptance? How do I accept this? How do I accept that? Which is quite interesting because with that sort of approach, you'll find that there are then 10,000 things that you need to accept every day. That sounds a bit exhausting. But rather, we're going to look at the nature of acceptance and what it is, and to see that it's not something that you do, but more accurately, it's something that shows itself the more you see the truth of your experience. And so the intent here, and this is always the case, and you can apply this pointer to anything that you apparently crave as it relates to an internal experience. Whether you say, how do I love? How do I forgive? How do I yada, yada, yada? These are all byproducts. These, let's call them virtues, are what arises as the truth of life is seen. And so in the absence of those things, in the absence of acceptance, the truth of life isn't being seen. This invites a beautiful deep breath where it's not, how do I conquer this challenge of forcing myself to accept something, which inspires a whole lot of thinking about it. Really what this inspires is a bit of stillness. If you're struggling with accepting something, let's start over. Let's take a breath. Let's come back to this moment and see if we can relax first. You know, and I've said this 1,000 times, and I search for possibly a different way to say it. What this really is asking an honest question that says, wait, what's really going on? Do you see how that question is seeking what's true? Do you see that in your agitation, in your resistance, in your fear, there are a myriad of assumptions about what's happening? And it's all of those assumptions that create the internal tension and restriction that you're experiencing. So much so, and I say this playfully but directly, in our attempt to accept things, we're often trying to accept something that's not even actually happening. And therefore, your efforting to accept it is reinforcing the idea that it's happening. But upon further inspection, it's not even happening. So what is there to accept? It's kind of like the idea of, how do I accept that this other person is rejecting me? How do I accept that? Do you see the impossible struggle there? Granted, it's easier to see the impossible struggle if you see that it's impossible for anyone to actually reject you. Can you see how you could spend hours or days and months trying to accept the reality that someone rejected you? And it reinforces the idea that someone rejected you. But then we ask the more honest question, wait, what's really going on here? Someone sent me a text message and said, no, they don't really want to hang out with me this weekend. And then for the next month, I'm feeling rejected. They don't like me. They think I'm unworthy. They think I'm not enough. How do I accept that? How do I accept that this other person thinks I'm not enough? Is that really what's happening? And then you get some more information and you find out that this other person's mother is in the hospital. They've got other things to do, and maybe they didn't want to talk about it. Oh, something else was happening, and I took it personally. Or someone says flat out, I don't like you. How do I accept that? How do I accept that this person that I like doesn't like me? Well, is it true that it's you that they don't like? Or does the appearance of you remind them of something in themselves that they don't like? Maybe the appearance of you reminds them of a circumstance they went through when they were 8 years old, and it brings up a haunting memory, and they don't like that haunting memory. Maybe that's what they don't like. Is it really you that they don't like? Is it personal? Or you're going through an experience. Maybe you lost a job. How do I accept that? Well, what do you think happened? Because if it's bothering you and you unravel that internal disturbance, you're interpreting it in a way that says you're less than. You're interpreting it in a way that gives it a meaning that it doesn't really have. And so in your attempt to accept it, you're simply validating the meaning. And here's my point. The more you see what's really true, what is there to accept? Accept that life is life? That's easy. I guess we could talk about accepting that the truth is the truth. That other people are free to see what they see. That's true. Accept that it's common to assume that things are personal. That's true. But it doesn't make it true. That's also true. And what's interesting here is that this is more difficult to see the more personal we make it. Right? We can come up with these silly examples where it's obvious. But then, of course, we go searching in our personal experience where it really hurts. And I invite you to see this, that the point where it really hurts, it really feels like it's personal. For example, you're in a romantic relationship and someone cheats on you and leaves you for another person. Oh, that's really personal. That's really about me. Well, again, the beautiful spiritual invitation here is to ask, okay, well, what's really happening? And we have to get honest about our human experience. When something happens, when there is a circumstance, the question here is, what are you experiencing? Are you experiencing the circumstance? Or are you experiencing your interpretation of it? I'm waiting for that car to finish doing what it's doing. Do you see how profound this question is? Because it really gets at the heart, at the reality of being human. And maybe you've been through this. Someone cheated on you, and you experienced this deep pain. Okay, understandable. That's human. But what is that internal disturbance responding to? Is it responding to how the pieces moved around on the surface? Or is it responding to the interpretation that you gave it? What you think it means? Furthermore, what you think it means about you. Furthermore, which is to say that it's personal. And to go one step deeper, which might be difficult to look at, but a very simple question, which doesn't mean you're wrong in any way, but the question is, the meaning that you're giving it, is it true that that's what it means? Which is also like saying, does someone else's actions really mean that you're not enough? What somebody else does with their life, does it really mean you're not lovable? Do you see this as it relates to acceptance? How do I accept the fact that someone cheated on me? Well, that's one way of making it about you. Wouldn't it be more accurate to say, and not even to say that this is totally true, but more accurate, that they cheated? But to say they cheated on me, that sounds like it adds an intensity of pain to it. They did something to me, which says I am now unworthy. Which says I am now less than. Which says I am now undeserving of love. Which says I am now unworthy. This goes right along with rejection. Somebody does something that we don't want them to do, and we interpret it as rejection. It's kind of like applying for a job and they don't give you the job. You can say, I was rejected from the job. That's one way of seeing it. Is it possible that you weren't the right fit for the job? Which doesn't say anything about your worth and value unless you want it to. You see, the deep question here is, as we go through our lives, how often are we telling these stories that effectively destroy our worth and value while we proclaim that somebody else is doing that to us? And subsequently, we withhold love from all of the people and circumstances that we think are doing it to us. When, understandably and more accurately, we are telling ourselves the story of ourselves being unworthy of love. Which is also like saying we are tying our worth and value to the world. Which is also like saying we are tying our worth and value to the opinions, to the actions of others. Which is kind of like saying we are tying our worth and value to the mental commentary bouncing around in the minds of other people. Do you see that there's so many things here that we might be trying to accept that are just misunderstandings about what is really going on? And the more you see the truth of what's really going on, the thing you're trying so hard to be accepted doesn't even need to be accepted because that's not what's really happening. This is why, in one way, if someone's struggling to accept something, I'd say give up the quest. See what's true. Stop trying to do this spiritual thing that you think is being accepting. And seek what's true. But of course, to return to our illustration of being cheated on, within the heart that takes it personally, that heart can feel so vengeful in its blame. It doesn't want to see what's true. It wants revenge. It really wants to project that pain outwardly because it doesn't want to see where it really comes from. Understandably. Right? Like, for example, and gosh, it's sensitive to talk about these things because I'm talking to people who are not in that space, and I might be talking to people who are in that space, and I might say dramatically different things if I'm talking to that person one-on-one. But in general, to have a heart with a lot of pain, it can be very terrifying to see that you're the one that's stabbing yourself in the heart. In one way, it's like a radical sense of responsibility. It's also like saying to recognize to what degree you are creating your own reality. And playfully speaking, to see that we are creating a shitty reality. That's not fun to see. It's easier to blame the world. It's like having to face how lost you are, right? It's vulnerable. It's humbling / humiliating. Which I think is an interesting display of words, humbling and humiliating. Something is humiliating when you don't want it to be the truth. But it is. It's humiliating to find out that you're not better than anyone else. It's humbling to embrace the truth that you're not better than anyone else. Do you see this? There's a pain in humiliation, which is to fight against what is true. And there's a beautiful humility in embracing the truth that says, I don't need to pretend to be better than anyone else. Thank God. How do I accept being humiliating? Or how do I accept being humiliated? Well, see the truth. It's so fascinating in our human experience. In one way, it's like a jungle of the mind, where as we're living out our humanness, we're swimming through this sea of ideas that in many ways are completely irrelevant, constantly in search of something more, not realizing we have it all right now. That right now we are the fullness. That right now there's nothing missing. That right now you are the full embodiment of love, and you just might not see it. And it's understandable. It's fine. But do you see this? Like, if you don't see the reality of what you are, if you don't see what we might call, let's just say, the spiritual wellness that is, the finality of the miracle that you're swimming in, that this is it, this is the real prize, to be alive. Do you see that if you don't see that, then you think there's something more in the future? Right? Because something in you innately knows that there's wholeness, that there's peace, there's freedom, there's love, there's yada, 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 everything lovely. And if you don't see that it's here right now, where else could it be? It's in the future. And so you imagine images of wholeness in the future, and you go chase those images. If only I was like this, or if only I was like that, then I could love myself. And so I go chase that image. Then I could relax, because I don't see that I can relax right now. And you see, all of this that we're chasing is in the mind, and it looks like it's in the world, but really it's in the mind, which is partly why we can't see the truth of reality, where it is the thing that we crave, because we're looking in the mind. Maybe a great illustration of this is that as it relates to your intrinsic desire to connect with wholeness, right? To know that what you are is whole and complete and adorably lovely. You won't find that if you're looking at the imagination of who you are, the character in your mind, the story of you. Because what you're really looking for is the realness of you, right? This spiritual promise, so to speak, of wholeness, of unity, of forgiveness, of all things that are an expression of an unconditional love. That's contained in the realness of what you are. The realness of what you are. And just so you know, sometimes I repeat myself because there's a dog barking in the background. And if I repeat myself, then I don't have to surgically remove the dog noise from the recording. Just so you know. Do you see this? That something that you're searching for in this life, which is wholeness, which is acceptance, which is whatever you want to call it, that relates to a feeling of peace and wellness. You are looking for that which is real. But we're looking for it in the unreal, which is in the mind, which often looks like we're looking for it in the world, not realizing that what you think is the world is just your mind. Is that confusing? Sure it is. Let's clarify. Think about a job promotion in the world. You're anxiously striving, you're pissed off, you're irritated, everyone else is an enemy, and you think, my goodness, if only I got that job promotion, then I could be at peace. Then I'd be whole. Then I'd be complete. I'd be whole. I'd be complete. I'd be able to relax if I get that thing in the world called a job promotion, or more money, or the perfect partner, or whatever. But don't you see that what you're chasing is not something in the world? You're chasing an idea about yourself, which is in the mind. Or if only I had XYZ car, it would look really cool. What are you chasing? The car? Or an idea of yourself being better than someone else? Or an idea of yourself that matches an image of your conditioning, where the world has told you people who have people who have XYZ car are special, are whole, are complete. What are you chasing? Something in the world? Or something in the mind? Or something in the mind? Do you see how wild this is? There's so much that we think exists in the world, but it's just thought. It's just chasing a collection of stories, trying to build on the idea of who you think you are in an effort to complete a picture of wholeness of a someone that's not real. And this fuels so much of our thinking and thinking and thinking, which goes nowhere. Which is why, in many ways, you can live this life and come to the realization where it seems like I haven't gone anywhere. And maybe that's, let's say, blinded by a bunch of stories of achievements, which is fine. Which is fine. It might be pleasant. You have a bunch of stories about yourself that says, I've achieved this and I've achieved that and yada, yada, yada. And that's fine. But is that really who you are? That story of achievement? Or is it just another one of these stories that we've collected that puts together an image of ourselves that we see as whole and complete, or almost whole and complete? I'm almost there. And that's fine. It's a beautifully human thing to do. In one way, it's like saying it's an expression of a healthy ego. And that can be helpful. But as it relates to that something inside of you that is seeking what's actually real and true, which is why you're here as a human being, sooner or later that idea of yourself is going to fail because you're going to feel like a fraud. It's like, I'm this person who has this and that and the other, but it doesn't really feel like me. I feel like a fraud. I hear you say that the dog barking isn't that loud for you, but it's very loud in the recording that I have to edit. You know, this really relates to the very essence of spirituality. In some way, asking the question, what are you really looking for? And do you notice in your mind you can create a massive list of all the things you're looking for in life? And then you can get more honest about that list. And it becomes much smaller. So much smaller that eventually it just becomes one thing. Just in the way that we might think that we're looking for acceptance. We're looking for forgiveness. We're looking for love. We're looking for yada, 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 all things lovely. And where do all those things come from? The truth of life. All of those things are the fabric of life. All of those things are your inherent way of being. All of those things are the way of life. Such as you can see the nature of acceptance. Everything is already accepted. Do you see this? Everything that rises and falls is accepted by life. What do you need to accept? It's already accepted. You can argue with it, but how's that going? Could you imagine walking into the forest and arguing with everything? When everything in the forest is clearly already accepted, meaning it has to be that way in order for the forest to be the forest. Do you think you know better than the forest? Which is to say, do you think you know better than God? Which is to say, do you think you know better than that which has put this all together? Are you going to come in here and try and stand in the middle and decide what should be what? Because you don't accept the way things are? Which is only because you don't really see the way things are. And the more you saw the way things really are, you'd say, oh, okay, I get it now. It's supposed to be that way. Now, again, you can go into the forest and say, okay, I'm going to allow everything to be what it is. And then you go searching through the 10,000 things, trying to accept them, not realizing that it's just one thing. It's one thing that's accepted. What is? It's not 10,000 separate pieces. Those 10,000 separate pieces you have are just 10,000 different thoughts. There are not 10,000 things to accept. There's what is. And when you see what is, you see that it's already accepted. And that which resists it, that which fights against it, is a self that's not really a self. Which is often fun to look at. Like if I'm in a state of resistance, if I'm arguing with what is, I like to ask myself, what's arguing here? Who's arguing? And it points me straight back to the character I think I am. The imagination of myself that thinks it's all personal, that thinks this life is about me rather than this life being about life. Right? It's like the self that stands up in the middle of the forest and says, I want to be important. I want to be more important than this, and I want to be more important than that, so I'm going to tell everything what to do. Because this is about me. Is it? Or is it about the miracle of life that allows it all to be, including you? What are you in service to? Are you in service to this imaginary idea of yourself that thinks it's separate from everything else? Or are you in service to this totality that is everything, that allows you to be, that is breathing the breath through you right now? That is breathing the breath through you right now. How do you accept yourself? See what you really are. Which is to also acknowledge what you're not. Which is also whatever you think exists in the mind of other people. Which is also whatever you imagine in your own mind. What you really are is not the product of imagination. That's imagination. And the question is, what are you really? Not what do you imagine? Not what picture do you paint of yourself? But what are you really? And to see what you really are, you will see that you're already accepted. And it's so beautiful to have that be your source rather than what bounces around in the mind of other people. Which is also a beautiful freedom that you extend to others, to let them think whatever they think. I'm going to say that again. Which is also a beautiful freedom to extend to others to think whatever they think. Never mind. That dog is really active today. My goodness. And it's funny, because I moved houses. I moved islands. Came over to this house in this quiet neighborhood. Of course, when I came and looked at the house 3 different times, there was no dogs barking. There was no airplanes flying overhead. It seemed perfectly fine. Oh yeah, this will be great. Super quiet here. Ta-da! Welcome to life, where nothing goes how you think it's going to go. And all is still well. Yeah, there's the option to buy a chew stick, and then there's the devil inside of me that wants to buy some sort of poison. That'll fix it. Which is actually a super common thing here in the Philippines. Surprisingly to find out, people poison each other's dogs. Human beings. I find it fascinating too, and it's, it just speaks to my conditioning and my culture growing up. Like, like if I had a dog, let's put it that way. If I had a dog that was outside constantly barking, no, that's not happening. Maybe there's a consideration for other people or the embarrassment of your dog causing a ruckus. But like, no, I wouldn't put up with that if I had a dog that was outside barking all the time. That's not happening. Some people don't give a shit. And I go for my walks in the morning around the neighborhood here, and we leave at like 5 o'clock in the morning, so it's super early. And, you walk by these fences where dogs are, caged up, and you're just peacefully walking by and they freak out. And in one way, the sense that I have is, dogs, they want to protect, right? They want to protect their owners. And when they feel caged, they don't feel like they can do a good job of protecting. Like I imagine if the gate was open, the dog would just come up and smell me and realize that I'm super chill. There's nothing to worry about, and he'd be fine. But because he can't check me out, because he can't run up to me, it scares him. And so he freaks out. Because granted, the dogs on the streets, not that they have that in this neighborhood, which is one of the things I like, but the dogs on the street, they can just come and check you out. They don't need to freak out. How similar is that to human beings? Human beings that feel caged. They're super scary to be around because they're so terrified on the inside. It's not safe. They're in a cage. Did we wrap that up? Did I say the final line? I don't even remember what I said. I'm sure there's an ending in there somewhere. Oh, I was looking at the donation chart as I was doing this series of live broadcasts, and they incrementally each day got more and more and more, and it was really inspiring. But yesterday's total was $70 in donations. Oh, actually, that doesn't. Oh, I can't really talk about that. Let me put it this way. The total donations yesterday was $120. And the first day I did this, it was $18. And then each day it just got more and more and more and more. So thank you for that. That's fun. And of course it would be cool to see it continue to climb. But also, we have the same people coming back, and it seems a bit unrealistic. Yeah, David, that's the point. Some people found a way around that, but I can't talk about the way around that. But still, better than nothing. No, it would have to be a completely different way. But I can't talk about that way. Oh, somebody else can talk about it though. Let me see if I can wrap up my message on acceptance. It's kind of funny on the concept of acceptance because, in a completely appropriate way, we could talk about the act of accepting, even though it's not something that you do. Like, in many ways, it might be too far of a leap to understand the things I've been talking about. And so we do need to play in the realm of trying to accept. And that's fine. And so let me put some thought into this. If I were to answer the question, if you had to exercise some sort of effort to accept something, what might be the way of going about it? And what arises for me instantly is an attitude that seeks to understand, which is kind of the same thing I've been talking about. See what's true. But I think it's a fascinating question, right? To say, how do I accept this? And then to follow up with, are you sure that's even what's happening? That's fascinating to me. And it feels like it's so much more honest than maybe some spiritual hyperbole where we are just pretending to accept something. And then there's also the trap of trying to accept something so that it goes away, which isn't really accepting it. Like, I accept you, but you need to be different. How do I accept myself, but still force myself to be different? Do you see this? It's kind of like a manipulation tactic, which is a super common thing. Not just in our humanness, but in spirituality as well. So often we use these methods of spirituality to further support our attempt to manipulate reality, to support the same egocentric agenda that we had when we came into spirituality, which is beautifully human. It's fine. We'll just get to see directly that it doesn't work. Ah, there's the first donation. Thank you, Alma. You guys good? Been here for an hour and almost 15 minutes. I'm not really in a hurry to go anywhere. At some point, I'm going to start getting really hungry. And I'm going to go cook a delicious meal. But I really appreciate being here with you. I really appreciate this space to take a moment and get really honest about our human experience, because there's so much love to be seen. And I understand that it's a struggle. And I hope you see in some way that it's a beautiful struggle. It's okay that it's a struggle. But that struggle is just inviting us into a deeper self-honesty and a deeper surrender of, let's say, the falsehood, the lie. Any questions before I bounce? Thanks for your hug, Cher. Thank you, Caroline. I do have to pin the comment that promotes my upcoming retreat. I'm not too good at all this marketing stuff, but we find our way. If you want to come hang out with me in my home in the Philippines, it's kind of last minute, but there's a spot left. First time I'm doing it here in the Philippines, and first time I'm going to try and do it in my home. Could be a disaster, could be beautiful. I'm up for the adventure. You must be in Europe somewhere listening at 2:29 a.m. Man, I'm really itching to... Can I talk about that? Go back out into the world and do live events. It's been a long time. I did it a lot pre-COVID. Traveled around, speaking to groups. And then that stopped. It all went online. Never really got back in the swing of it. But I'm so not interested in organizing all of that. I used to have other people that did it for me. Glad you're enjoying that course, Cher. That's a good one. I went all over the place. All over the US, all over Europe. Went to Australia. Went to Thailand, went to Bali. I stopped in Cambodia for a little while, lived there, but didn't do any events there. And just small meetups, anywhere between 2 people to 500 people. I think I want to do that again. But I gotta find somebody to arrange it all. That is not a good use of my time. Might be a fun job for someone, though. I think that's my vision. Like, can I just do what I enjoy doing? Sitting with people, loving on people, making awesome audio and video. And somebody else takes care of all that other stuff. finds and organizes the spaces for me to go sit and love on people. God, that would be awesome. Then I could be happy. Then I'd be complete. I do remember the constant traveling, though. That was, I guess there was times it was tough, but it was times I really enjoyed it. Meeting new people, staying with people. It was so sweet. So sweet. People were so appreciative. Like, people would invite me to stay at their house, and they were just so kind and so sweet. And then, of course, sometimes you encounter people with the adorable guru complex. They think I'm just way too special. It's like, oh, calm down. Let me just be a dude. That's fun. Thanks, Alma, for the donation. I'm going to get out of here now. Appreciate you guys. I'll be back tomorrow, same time. It'll be the last one of this series. Then I'll schedule some more next week, but I have no clue when or how many. We'll just see what happens. See you next time. Tell your friends. That's also something that really helps me do what I do. The audience grows. And again, I'm not a big marketing enthusiast. I do what I can, but I hope that you help me spread the word. See you next time. Bye-bye.